Hey everyone, this is Teresa from Base 10 Montessori, and today I want to make a video about the journey of addition. Now, a lot of you have been asking for this video or asking for the files for this video to see how the journey of addition works. And if you've been watching my other videos, you know I've been promising to do a video on the journey of addition or the journey of subtraction, multiplication, division. So today we're going to start with the journey of addition. Now, this is going to be according to my AMI Montessori album. Now, if you are an AMS teacher, this is going to look a little bit different, but the exercise is still going to be the same. So you can look at this and you can apply it to your own albums. And even if you are AMI trained, just like I am, our albums might be very different. And so you could go through here and make some exchanges or substitutes or change things around so that it matches what you're learning from your institute. And if you're not Montessori trained at all, I still think this is a really good exercise to go through because you really want to be able to think through, well, in my classroom, what is that journey of addition? What does it look like for the child in the classroom to go through this whole entire journey of addition from beginning to finish? So that's what we're going to go through today. We're going to start with the beginning of my math album and we're going to work our way through and we're going to think about every instance in our album where we're showing addition, even if it's not directly. So when we're thinking about the journey of addition in the Montessori classroom, the very first place we're going to start is the number rods. Now, when we do the number rods, we are really working on that one-to-one correspondence idea. When it comes to the math album, this is really going to be the first place that we are preparing our students for addition. But there are extensions to this lesson. We have to get through the number rods, and we do have to present the sandpaper numbers or the sandpaper numerals before we actually get around to doing this experience, the sensorial experience of addition, which is going to be where our journey begins with our students in the 3 to 6 environment. Now, this is going to be around the age of 3. Some children may start earlier, some might start a little bit later, so just keep that in mind. After we have presented the number rods, we're going to get into these extensions, and that's what we call it in AMI Montessori. We call them extensions. These are lessons on the same material that differ in some way, and this extension is going to get into our sensorial experience of addition. So when we're going through this sensorial impression of addition, we're going to invite the child to build the number rods in the usual manner, and then the child is also going to place the cards with the rods. So we're going to have both the numerals and we're going to have the number rods together. So we've introduced both separately, we've been working with them together, and now for the sensorial impression of addition, we're going to put it together again. The child will get one rod, the one rod, and place it at the end of the 9 right here. And then they're going to place the number card 1 with the 1 rod. This is going to show that the 9 rod and the 1 rod together are the same as the 10 rod. So we're going to have the 9 rod, we're going to have the 1 rod up with it, and we're going to have the 9 number card and the 1 number card. Essentially what we're showing the child is 9 plus 1 is 10, and that's going to look exactly the same as this 10 rod right at the top. And then we're going to continue on in the same manner until the child gets to the 5 rod. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right here. We're going to ask the child what would happen if he wanted to use the 5 to make a 10. And then we can show him that he can build the number by flipping the 5 rod from left to right. So all we're going to do is take that 5 and flip it to the other side right over here so that we're going to show it equals the same as 10. And we're showing them that 5 plus 5 is 10. We're not doing direct addition here, but we are giving that sensorial impression. And that's what we do in the Montessori classroom, is we always give that sensorial impression first before we do a direct lesson. And then they can explore this lesson. They can work through it. Once we've shown this, they can really work with this independently however they want. They can manipulate the rods so that they can do their own addition in any way they want and see if they can get 2 or 3 different rods to equal another one. And you know that they'll be understanding the lesson if they are really manipulating these materials. So that is where the journey of addition starts. It starts with introducing the number rods and the sandpaper numerals, and then bringing the numerals and the rods together. And then after that, we can start getting into those extensions. So if I was your examiner and I was saying, tell me where the journey of addition really begins in the Montessori classroom, you'll want to briefly mention about how we're introducing the number rods and introducing the sandpaper numerals separately and then bringing them together. And then you're going to want to go into talking about these experiences that the child is going to have with manipulating the materials for the sensorial impression of addition. So just keep that in mind. If an examiner asks you to explain where the journey of addition starts, it's going to be right here. So the next part of our journey is in the collective exercises or the bank game. And right here we have the addition layout. And this is our first direct lesson for addition is here in the collective exercises or the bank game. So we've got our layout right here, right? We've got hopefully 3 students and then our bank layout right here. And then these are pictures from my album, by the way. These are just diagrams that I had to make for my math album. I did them on the computer. And if you're wondering whether or not it's better to do it on computer or by hand, after some reflection, I'm wishing I had done mine by hand. I'm not great at drawing, so I opted for a computer thinking that would be easier, and honestly, it wasn't. It was still difficult. But anyways, let's continue. So here is our first official direct addition lesson. And let's think about what's happening in the collective exercises for a second, right? First of all, what age group is this? Which age group is learning addition in the collective exercises? This is going to be somewhere around 4 to 4.5 years old. And when we're thinking about the collective exercises, we have to remember what is the purpose here? It's to give a definition and the experience. We are combining the sensorial impression now and putting it together with words, with a definition. And we're making it as concrete as possible, but we're also keeping it simple. So when we go through this experience of addition for the first time very formally, we are going to give that definition of addition. And what is that definition? When you take small quantities and combine them, you get a larger quantity. So we're going to be learning static addition and dynamic addition during this experience. And the movement that we're incorporating through these exercises, and remember the collective exercises are very busy. They should be very sensorial. The child should be getting up. They should be moving around. They should be carrying things. It should be an experience. There should not be something where they just sit and watch. They need to be experiencing it. They need to feel what 1,000 feels like, and they need to feel what a unit feels like. And they need to feel what it's like to have it separately and then combined together. So it's through this movement that the exercises help them learn the process of the addition, the experience of addition, and the concept of addition. So the more sensorial you can make this, the more experience you can give them, the better they're going to learn this information. So this is the next step on our journey to addition. And after that, what comes next? If you're thinking through your album, we started out with number rods, that very sensorial impression with addition. Now we've moved on to the collective exercises, and we're having this very formal lesson and definition of addition. And then once they've mastered this in both static and dynamic, where are they going next? They're going to the stamp game. So here we are with the stamp game. And this is the next stop in our journey through addition. We're going to be doing static addition with the stamp game. And let's think through this once again. What age group are we looking for? If I was your examiner right now and I was asking you to explain the journey of addition or asking you to think through what's happening before they even get to this lesson, what do you need to think about? First of all, you need to be able to think about the age. So think about the age real quick. We know that the number rods were around the age of 3. And that the collective exercises are going to be around 4.5. So what age would the stamp game be? And this is really important if you get stuck during your exams, if you're getting stuck about, what's the order for something. The best advice I can give you for Montessori is that everything should be logical. You should be able to think through this and at least make an educated guess. If something is not logical to you, then I would say that's where you need to ask your trainer some questions. If you can't logically think through what comes next or what comes before, there might be a missing piece of the puzzle that you need to figure out there. And so we need to go through that and think what's logical. So if the collective exercise is around 4.5, the stamp game is going to be 4.5 to 5, right? This is going to get into your early kindergarten, late preschool age students. And again, let's think through what is the purpose of the stamp game. They've already had the experience with addition. So what is the purpose of the stamp game? And I want you to remember this important term right here, isolation of difficulty. In each exercise that we are introducing, we are exercising an isolation of difficulty. We're not giving tons of difficulties all at once to the student. We're taking one or two things at a time, mastering them, and then continuing forward so that we only have one difficulty at a time that we're introducing. So in the collective exercises, we were really focusing about having that sensorial experience combined with the definition and the language of addition. But now we're going to go one step further with the stamp game. And so we're going to introduce the symbol for addition during the stamp game, right? That's what's going to be different here. We're introducing the symbol for addition and we're learning the language even more. So before in the collective exercises, we're only learning the definition. But here in the stamp game, we're going to get more formal by introducing the addends and the sum. So the addends and the sum, that language is introduced in the stamp game. And we're going to show them how to write the equations on the paper. So these are new difficulties that the student has to work into their addition. And of course, there's more individual work in the stamp game. The collective exercises are all about working in a group. And this is really great because 4-year-olds are so social, right? They're very social. And a lot of people get the misconception that Montessori is all about the child working by themselves in isolation, and that's really not true. That's all according to context, right? There are definitely lessons where we are individual. And that's age appropriate for a lot of these young children. But the older they get, the more they're going to want to work with a friend or in a group. And Montessori did not discourage that, but she looked for purposeful and important ways for them to work together in a group. And that's what makes it so much fun, is it is a very social time for the student. And we have to remember that as we're going through that. But here in the stamp game, it changes back to an individual lesson. Now, that being said, when I'm teaching the stamp game to older students, maybe even elementary students that really need to go back and work on the stamp game, sometimes I do it as a group lesson because that is what an elementary student might need. They tend to be more of social learners. So I would say, number one, this is an individual lesson, but also remember that we can be flexible and meet the needs of students who might need to learn a little bit differently. But if you're going through your exams and you're talking to your examiner, I would really focus on the fact that we've moved from the group collective lessons back into that individual lesson. We're working on the symbol, we're working on the language, and we're working on how to write the equation. We're working on writing the numbers. And so we're taking this next step towards abstraction in the stamp game. It's no longer just about that experience and that concrete experience that's actually very exhausting if you're working with older students. They're not going to enjoy the collective exercises because the collective exercises have so much movement. It's perfect for a 4-year-old. It's not perfect for an elementary student. So when we're talking about this individual work and we're talking about this idea of abstract, the most important part of the work, the most exhausting part of the work, needs to be in their mind, because that is where the abstraction comes from, right? It's not coming from movement anymore. The understanding isn't coming from movement. The work is really starting to happen more in their mind, and they're holding those ideas in their mind more so than they did before. So when we're looking at this, and we're looking at how we're introducing the concept of the units, tens, hundreds, and thousands, and we're writing the numbers. There's a lot of abstraction going on. And an older student wants that. They crave that. They don't want the movement anymore. Now, maybe they might need it, and that is going to be the case in the real world, but when you're working towards exams, remember you're in the perfect Montessori world with the perfect ideal student. And so you want to give the perfect ideal answer. And when you're out in the real world, you can think about how to flex with this type of lesson and how to make it a little bit different to meet different students' needs. But when you're coming to exams, you really need to be giving them the answer that applies to the ideal environment with the ideal student. And the ideal student has an abstract mind. They're starting to understand these concepts and they're capable of grasping the language. So just remember that if you are gearing up towards your exams, you are answering for the perfect student. And once you get past your exams and you get into your classroom, then you're going to spend the rest of your life figuring out how to adapt your albums to children who aren't learning in a perfect Montessori environment or might have some difficulties with learning different things in your classroom. So that's the stamp game. And after the stamp game, where would we move next? And this is where it's going to start getting a little more challenging. So far, we understand the journey of addition through the number rods and that sensorial impression of addition, and then that formal presentation with the collective exercises, and then this step into abstraction with the stamp game. But think real hard for a second and think about what might come next in that journey for addition. And again, this might be a place where your albums could be different than my albums. And that's why it's important for you as you're creating your notes and creating your system to really have it reflect what your training has taught you, what your experience has taught you. If you're going through training right now and it's different, make your notes according to your album. And if you're done with training or you aren't going to training right now, you can still do this exercise according to your classroom, according to your experiences. So don't just copy what I have, but think critically about what you're going through right now in your life, in your training, in your experiences, and make this journey your own. All right, so if we're going to the next step in addition, what would happen after the stamp game? When it comes to the journey of addition, the next step would be the dot game. And what happens in the dot game? Think about that for a second. What are we doing in the dot game that's different? And what age group are we thinking about when it comes to the dot game? The age group is going to come after the stamp game. So if the stamp game is around 5 years old, this is probably going to come somewhere around 5.5. Now I will say that this is a bit difficult to look through. It's a bit difficult to focus on. So if you have a student with difficulty focusing, this might be overwhelming. It might not work very well for them. I would give it a try, but also when you are introducing it, again, think about the purpose. So we have a few different things going on when it comes to the dot game. The first thing is right here, right? We've got 10,000. We haven't worked with 10,000 yet. So that's going to be new. We're going to go past that 10,000. We're going to get into some big numbers here in the dot game. The second thing we're going to be introducing is the comma after the 1 and after the 10. So we're going to show that separation, and that when we get to 1,000, we're going to have those 3 zeros and then the comma. And the other thing we're doing in the dot game is we are reinforcing carrying. We've got several add-ins. So before we were just doing at most 3 add-ins in the collective exercises. And a lot of times with the stamp game, we're really just doing 2. So remember, we really are just seeing 2 or 3 add-ins. But this is going to add up, and it's going to be really big numbers. And again, we are taking this idea of the isolation of difficulty, and we are, again, making this more abstract. And in the dot game, we're going to be replacing our numbers with dots. So the student really has to be able to hold a lot of information in their head when working through this exercise. And I will try to link to all of my videos down below so that you have these exercises available for you. The ones that I do have. I haven't recorded everything in my album, so I don't have a video for everything. But for as many as possible, I will try to put the video links down below so that you can see how this works. And I'll also link to templates so that you can work through this with Montessori Printshop. A lot of the Montessori Printshop materials, if you're not going through training, the Montessori Printshop materials will have instructions and they will have paper templates of a lot of these exercises. So that's also going to be available to you at the end of this video. And I will place that down in the comment section below. But this is just an idea of what that dot game looks like. So there's your dot game presentation for you. So we've gone through the number rods, the collective exercises, the stamp game, the dot game, and now we have to move on to that next step. So if you are AMI trained or going through AMI training, we are still in group 2 of math. We haven't moved on yet. So when we're thinking about group 2 of math and we're thinking about everything they've accomplished during group 2, how do we show mastery of what we learned? What comes next? How do we show that this information that we're learning, these experiences that we're having, can be applied to the wider world? And this might be something that your examiner asks you. How do we know that children can take these experiences and apply them to the real world? And that's what's going to be next in your journey through addition. That next step is word problems. Addition word problems. So we're going to give them addition word problems for them to read and work through. And when we're doing that, they can use anything in the classroom to solve that problem. They can go through all the materials that they've just learned and they can think through, okay, here is the scenario. They're going to read it and they're going to think critically about what in the classroom might help them solve this problem. And then they're going to come up with an answer. Now, in order to do that, that takes a lot of different skills coming together. So again, if you're not quite sure of the age, you're not quite sure of the process, think logically. Montessori is always logical. Think back to your practical life. Logical sequence of order. If you get messed up, just think back where you've been and where you're going, and there should be a logical answer to it. So the children here at this age, these are really going to be your kindergartners getting ready for first grade. A lot of you will have students that don't get this far, and that's okay because that word problems take the ability to read. And reading might be a challenge for some students. This is a student that's going to be ready for first grade. And this is also, word problems are going to be what shows you mastery. It demonstrates their mastery over everything they've been learning. In every area of the math album, we're going to conclude each group with a mastery exercise, with a mastery lesson that's going to show I understand the concept of this group. So I want you to think about that as you're going through each section of your math album as well. That might be something an examiner asks you about. Okay, so we just finished talking about the group 2 and how the word problems are an application of knowledge for group 2. And it's part of that journey of addition, but that is not the end of our journey of addition. Because what we've done so far is an isolation of difficulty, remember? We have isolated out each difficulty. And now we're not on to group 3. We're going to skip group 3. That's not part of our journey of addition, not directly. And we're going to jump into group 4 because that is where the journey of addition goes next. And what's happening when we get to group 4? It's the exploration and memorization of tables. That is where we're going next. We have introduced a lot of things so far in group 1 and group 2. So here in the journey of addition with the snake game, we are going to be working with 5-year-olds. When we start thinking about the addition snake game, This is all about making those combinations of 10. And we're showing a control of error at the very end so that they can correct their own work. And as we're going through the snake game, we're showing them, first of all, through colors, through counting, and through the length of the beads and the black and white beads, how to make different combinations of 10. And at the end, we're going to show them how to correct their work down here at the bottom by showing how each combination of 10 that we worked with in this game do equal a 10 bar. So in order to become an abstract thinker, we're going to have to do some memorization. But because Montessori believes in the sensorial impression of learning, the impression comes first. And that's what the addition snake game is. It's all about that impression. Everything builds on a sensorial impression. And then it becomes more abstract. So right here, combinations of 10. In order to get really good at addition, we need to see it, we need to experience it, and that's going to help us memorize it. And in order to memorize things, we have to use different types of sensorial experiences, right? That's the best way to learn. So what comes next? In my album, what comes next is the addition strip board. So what age are we talking about here? This again is going to be around 5.5 to 6 years old. This is the child that's really preparing for first grade. And while this is a very easy to manipulate, easy to use material, the purpose of it is to show, again, the addition tables, to start getting into addition tables, to experience it, look at it, feel it, manipulate it in different ways. The child is also writing the equations, which also helps for memorization. And if you are interested in the addition strip boards and you don't want to pay a lot of money for them, I'll make sure to put a link down below for Montessori Printshop. I have a copy through Montessori Printshop, and honestly, I kind of like using them because if anyone's owned the addition strip boards, you know that pieces get lost very easily, and it's nice to have a paper copy you can print out again and replace if you need to. So that might be an economical version of this. Or if you're just a student and you want to practice the addition strip board at home and you don't want to spend a lot of money, the paper version, I highly recommend it. And it also comes with instructions from Montessori Printshop. So I do recommend this one as well as the addition tables from Montessori Printshop. I own them. I use them all the time, and they actually work really well for tutoring as well. And when it came to things like COVID, having a paper copy of this to be able to send home and work with children remotely is pretty useful. I will admit that. So after the addition strip board presentation, we're going to go through the addition tables. So we have the 6 addition charts. There are 2 control charts and 4 working charts. And this is really where the memorization of facts are going to solidify. You can have them make their own charts. I put a lot of paper charts out for them to make for themselves. Sometimes they like that better than the tiles. And it's amazing. Children who are in this stage for memorizing addition charts will go over these charts and create these charts and write down these charts over and over and over again. You're going to see them repeating this until they've mastered it for each and every type of chart. So they may not like the manipulation of the tiles on the blank chart, which I'll show you in just a minute, but I've had many students enjoy filling it in with paper and pencil. So just remember that when you're out in the real world, they may not enjoy the blank chart with the tiles because the tiles can get messed up too easily, but they often love writing it. So just remember that when they're in that stage of exploring those charts, and this goes definitely for elementary students, they're going to write those charts over and over and over and over again. There's some children that are just going to obsess over it. Here is the addition chart 3 with just an example of how that works. Addition chart 4, 5, and 6. This is the blank chart I was talking about. And usually these have physical tiles that you have to place on a wooden chart. And if they get knocked around or moved, they'll all come off and the child will be upset and devastated. And that's why sometimes the paper charts where they just fill it in with a paper and a pencil sometimes work better. But we're not done yet. we have to move on to group number 5. So when we get to group number 5, we're going to be at the small bead frame. But group number 5 has a special name, and it's called the passage to abstraction. And this is really where we want to get our students to be at the end of our 3 years of working with them when it comes to the math album. And this is also why it's really important to do the exploration and memorization of tables. Because when we get to the small bead frame, when we get to working in group 5, they're going to need to be able to hold these concepts and hold these ideas in their head while they use very abstract materials. So they really do need to have that memorization fairly well down before they move on to that small bead frame. So again, the small bead frame, what age are we looking at? Should be around 5.5. And when we're doing the small bead frame, we are going to do static and dynamic addition. Again, this isolation of difficulty here is that it's going to be more abstract. They're going to have to hold more ideas in their head. They're also going to have to be looking at the families, such as the simple family right here. And then we have the family of the thousands right here. And when we get to large bead frame, those families are going to grow. And when we're using the bead frame, we're going to be reusing the same beads over and over again. It's not like the stamp game or the collective exercises where we only use an item once, right? We're going to be reusing that. We're going to be reusing the same beads in each category. So when we have to do an exchange, we're not going to get more beads. They all have to stay on the frame. So we're going to be reusing them, and that's going to require a little more abstraction. So we're limiting them. We're limiting their ability to use an infinite source of materials. And again, we're showing them how to write into the thousands and then eventually into the millions, right, with static and dynamic. So before we get to the large bead frame, we really do have one more lesson that we need to include in our journey to addition, and that is the wooden hierarchy of numbers. Now, I'm going to admit, I have never had a wooden hierarchy of numbers in my classroom. The wooden hierarchy of numbers is a lesson that we present to show into the millions. We're really showing what it looks like and just how small those numbers are in comparison to all the numbers that can exist in the entire world. And we start talking about and showing concretely what 1 million looks like. And when we're introducing this lesson and we're showing them that we can make numbers that are so much bigger than 10,000, we allow them to imagine what's even bigger than 1,000,000 and what it would look like to fill the room with those numbers. If we had those materials, what would it look like? What would the room be filled with? And so we're really doing a thought experiment as well as a concrete exploration of 1 million. And that's what comes before we get into the large bead frame. Now, the large bead frame we are mostly going to use for multiplication. However, when we start working with the large bead frame, we're going to use it simply with addition, and then we're going to work our way to multiplication. And I don't have a video on the small bead frame, but I do have a video on the large bead frame and how to do multiplication with that. So I'll make sure to link to all of this down below. And then there is one last part to our journey to addition. We have finished up group 5 with the large bead frame, and we have one more group left. So what is that group? It's fractions. And when we give this presentation, we're doing addition with a common denominator, and it's a very simple lesson. We keep it very simple, very easy. Now, we've been working with the fractions in other ways up until this point. We've been doing a lot of sensorial impressions of the fractions. We've been doing a lot of exploration with the fraction insets, but when it comes to the journey of addition, this is the only lesson in the journey for addition that we're going to include. This is a formal lesson about how to create and write and apply the idea of addition with the fractions. And this is where we will end our journey through addition today. So this is what I have for my albums. We're going to go and start with those number rods. In the extension lessons, there's going to be that sensorial impression of addition, and we're going to show them how we can manipulate the number rods to do addition. But then that very first formal lesson is going to come into the collective exercises. And then we're going to move through the stamp game. We'll go through the dot game and word problems, and then we're going to get into the exploration and memorization of math facts with the addition snake game, the strip boards, and the addition charts. And then we're going to get into the passage to abstraction. We're going to apply all of the memorization that we've done. And we're going to apply that to the small bead frame. We're going to apply that to the large bead frame. And then we're going to demonstrate all of that with the fraction insets. And we're only doing a common denominator when it comes to that 3 to 6 age group, right? We're not going to get into anything more complicated than that. And usually that's a pretty fun, easy lesson that I move through pretty quickly with students. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope this was helpful in thinking about the journey of addition through the classroom and through the AMI album. And if your album is different, that's okay. I want you to make your notes and your journey based on your training and your experience. Again, if you are AMI trained and your institute has a certain way of doing things that's different than mine, that's okay. And if you're AMS trained and your album looks a lot different than mine, that's still okay. You can create your journey based on your training and your experience. And this might be a really great thing to have a parent night discussion on. And I just want to take a moment to say how incredible it is that our students learn as much as they do and that they absorb as much as they do. And it really is a testament to the Montessori experience and how brilliant this method is. It's really quite phenomenal what they're able to pick up. And not just pick up, but master. And so my best advice for everyone out there is never underestimate the child. Have faith in the child, as Mario Montessori used to say. Have faith in the child and believe that they are capable of doing great big work.